Now, the real question with California is they said that it was a blowout, which that in itself is okay. He won a squeaker. He won by 3 or 4 points. The blowout thing, I just don't understand. Now, there are some things in there to put into the equation that can make this a little bit more understandable. But always remember, there is this decertification of the election stuff. I never put any eggs in that basket. I am very curious to see what people are going to be doing to fortify themselves, to shape themselves up for 2022. Now, all of the depression, that depression factor, and that throwing your hands up in the air, and you had all of our support galvanized for 2020 in places, especially like California, who saw really, really a wonderful patriotic showings from people in California, Beverly Hills, all that. It was wonderful to see what was going out there. And then what happened? Then November happened. And then everybody reached, very fairly too, reached the conclusion. Said, well, if this is not corrected, if this is allowed to stand, if what we can see slowly happening, dribbling away, and everybody putting the screws to this and trying to lock it in place for Joe Biden, if this is allowed to happen, if he's inaugurated and this is allowed to stand, and we allow time to go by, and this wound gets cauterized, then what the hell point is it? What point is there to vote? And remember, everybody, that trickles down to down ballot votes. It's including gubernatorial races in places like California, because as Chris Ann Hall has said time and time again, it was not a federal election. The seat that you're going for every 4 years for the presidency, yes, it is in the executive branch. It's part of the general government, absolutely. But all of the elections that make that determination as to who's going to be president for a term of 4 years, all of those elections are local elections. So it's not that there is some kind of a different mechanism, there's some kind of a different game plan in place, and the people in place that run a federal election or a down ballot election. You go into the voting booth in November of 2024, you're going to be able to vote for president, you're going to be able to vote for a senator, perhaps, you're going to be able to vote for state representatives as well. It's the state house, local city council. There's a lot of things are put together. It's all at the same time, but the elections are run by the same people, and the results are sent up the chain depending on where they're going to be. So I understand why people threw their hands up in disgust and said, fuck this, what the hell's the point? But there are prices to pay, even worse prices to pay for that. My whole thing coming out of the question I asked, one of the main questions I asked coming out of the November farce was, how do we maintain the energy? How do we maintain the people that now know about their fellow countrymen? The people who have now been able to see they are not in the minority. They've been able to see in even the most cobalt blue of places in the country that there is still wonderful amounts of life that is coming to life. What do you do to keep that together? Now, it's very hard to keep that together and to stay visible after the chicanery and the operation that was January 6th, and we'll get into that in a second as well. That's the real thing. Yes, we've been dicked over, but we've been dicked over by desperate people who had no other choice but to act more nakedly desperate than they ever had in their life. In many ways, the November election, what they had to commit to doing, was a wonderful feat by us. Never in this country's history have people had to act so brazenly and so ridiculous, so cartoonish in their scratching and clawing for power to do what they did. Lockstep between the political class, the intelligence community, the media, everybody that came together, all the think tanks, everybody that came together to make that happen from both parties. It was a wonderful feat, regardless of the loss that we were ultimately dealt. You know? But what does it all mean? Here's from Yahoo News. Photos. Newsom soundly defeats GOP-led recall effort. Governor Gavin Newsom survived the historic recall election Tuesday, winning a major vote of confidence during a COVID-19 pandemic that has shattered families and livelihoods and tested his ability to lead the state through the largest worldwide health crisis in modern times. Oh, good for you, Yahoo, for really framing it. Oh, he was just a victim of circumstance. The guy was trying, goddammit. The recall offered Republicans their best chance in more than a decade to take the helm of the largest state in the union. But the effort was undercut when Newsom and the nation's leading Democrats, aided by the visits to California by President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's what got people to go to the polls. Joe Biden, the guy that wears the Depends, and Kamala Harris, a woman who was chased off of the primary stage before they even started voting because she was coming in at half a point. That nobody likes her. Yeah, that's it. Thank God. Thank God all of those Democrats everybody hates that got such a shellacking from coast to coast on election night, other than what they needed the most. They needed the presidency. They needed to find a way to shave away influence at the U.S. Senate level as well, because they had to get rid of Donald Trump. And they almost lost the House. They lost more ground in the state legislatures. Oh, man, yeah, but President Biden, he showed up and he galvanized. Oh, everybody, they were wondering, should we go and vote? Oh, here comes Biden. They portrayed the campaign to oust the governor as a life-and-death battle against Trumpism and far-right anti-vaccine activists. These are the people who used to go to bat for those who never wanted to have any vaccines. Conservative talk show host Larry Elder led the 46 candidates in the second question on the ballot, hoping to become governor, but that became meaningless after a majority of California voters chose to keep Newsom in office. So that's one thing. Now, CNN was caught displaying, once again, self-deleting vote totals, as we saw all over the place on election night in 2020. I have a few Californian friends, as I said before, who have about a dozen or so each people in their lives who have shared those anecdotes about going to the polls and being told that they have already voted. So what's come of that, I don't know. Where that was happening, what was the reasoning for it, I don't know. In the lead up to it, we were hearing a lot about problems with ballots. We know that this has probably been the game in California for a long time. Long time. So what do? They declare, one way or another, they declare themselves the winners. They're able to display certain amount of numbers on the screen. They parade around like proud peacocks, just crowing about how Trumpism has been defeated, and that's it. That's their protocol, and there's no real way to change. I don't know. I guess in their case, there's no real reason to change their protocol because it works. That's what they did in 2020. They just sapped away all the numbers in enough states to be able to give Joe Biden a win. They declared him the winner. He immediately made the fake office of the president-elect, started putting together a cabinet. George Stephanopoulos started playing with himself on television every night, talking about the new president. Jake Tapper, he finally was able to get a hard-on again. So they kept they act as if, and they just go on from there. And it works. Now, here's the other thing that works, unfortunately. Because of the very brazen operations they have been able to run with no pushback and no correction and no one held accountable at all. Jack Posobiec put it out there today. Trump received 6 million votes in California in the year 2020. Recall only received 3 million votes yesterday. Millions of Republicans stayed home. That's a fact. Millions stayed home. Now, the person who put this up on the Chans, the person who put this up on 4chan, said Republicans are so mad about 2020 that they won't vote anymore. LMAO, works for me. Does that not piss you off? Does that not piss you off? Works for me, says one mindless shill twat out there. Does that not piss you off? It should, because it really highlights the situation we're in, and also the ignorance that person's in. That person finds himself in too, because it's like, even I said, what is the point of voting? And it's a fair question, as I said before, and it's also a fair question to answer the fact that the election fraud is confident and so naked and in full view of everybody right now. Would it not? Would that not make the act of not voting at all a fair response as well to what we're seeing? But just staying home obviously has its price as well. And I also understood the quandary about staying home, because where do you go? Where do you go? Should we all voice our displeasure at the rally that the FBI is organizing on September 18th in D.C. right now? Everybody going to the FBI rally? Is anybody going to go anywhere near that fucking thing? So it's like, what do you do? Do you go vote? Well, nothing's changed, so what's the point? Do you stay home? They're laughing at you because now they're winning by bigger margins and we've completely just surrendered. Do you go out? Well, you're going to be agent provocateured and smeared by a media that has now declared half of the country domestic terrorists, and they're just waiting to roll out the National Guard again. You just had George Bush, Hillary Clinton, and all their friends on 9/11, 20 years after, reprogram us into how to look at 9/11. And now we're Al-Qaeda. So it is a really shitty situation to be in. I feel like we're in some fucked up Chinese finger trap. Now, the only thing that is comforting is that the little retards who say these things, like this person on 4chan did, who see these numbers and say, good, the Trumpers are staying home, I'm fine with that, they're going to die a most miserable of death. Because when they die, when this thing comes and claims us all, they're going to die ignorant. They're not going to understand what happened. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel really good. The dumbfounded dipshits that Tool wrote about in Anima, that makes me feel good. You know? Yeah, nothing's going to spare them from the hell that's coming, that's for sure. They're not protected. They are just a pathetic means to an end for somebody else. So we'll see what happens there and what's actually uncovered. But there is a real, legitimate faction of people who stayed home. And I can't blame them. But on the other hand, you'll never know what could have been now.